Marcus Thompson had been called many things during his 6 months at the Galactic Defense Academy. Slowpoke was popular among the Zentorian cadets. Deadweight seemed to be the favorite of his human classmates. But Turtle, well, that one stuck like plasma residue on a hull breach. "Thompson, you magnificent disaster!" bellowed Instructor Cracks, his forearms gesticulating wildly as Marcus stumbled across the finish line a full 30 seconds behind the next slowest cadet. "I have seen wounded Sluggoth move faster than you, and they are literally made of mucus." The obstacle course scoreboard flickered with the day's results. Marcus squinted at the holographic display, watching his name settle into its usual position at the very bottom. Above him, in descending order of competence, sat the names of beings from across the galaxy. Veltar of Speedius Prime held the top spot, naturally. The reptilian had reflexes that made hummingbirds look sluggish. "Perhaps," Krax continued, his mandibles clicking with barely contained irritation, "we should consider reassigning you to the cafeteria division. I hear they need someone to slowly stir soup." A ripple of chittering laughter echoed through the assembled cadets. The insectoids found everything amusing when it wasn't happening to them. The Zentorians just looked bored. Apparently watching humans fail had lost its novelty somewhere around month 3. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and tried to ignore the burning sensation in his lungs. Earth gravity was one thing, but the Academy's training grounds operated at twice normal gravity to accommodate the stronger species. Every day felt like running through molasses while wearing cement boots. "To the quarterly assessment approaches," announced Commander Veltar, slithering forward on his powerful tail. His scales shimmered with that insufferable perfection that made Marcus want to introduce him to a nice hot plasma torch. "Those who cannot keep pace will find themselves reassigned to more suitable positions." Suitable positions. Right, like scrubbing waste reclamation systems or cataloging space debris. Marcus had heard all the threats before. The Academy made it clear from day one that humans were here on probation. Earth had finally been invited to join the Galactic Defense Force, but barely. The general consensus seemed to be that humans were too slow, too weak, and too stupid to contribute anything meaningful to galactic security. "But hey," Marcus muttered under his breath, "at least we have participation trophies back home." The other human cadets avoided eye contact as they filed out of the training facility. Even his own species had written him off. Fair enough, when you're consistently dead last in a class full of beings who evolved from predators, prey animals, and occasionally sentient gas clouds. Optimism becomes a luxury you can't afford. Tomorrow would bring another round of speed trials, agility tests, and combat simulations. Tomorrow Marcus would once again demonstrate that humans belonged somewhere near the bottom of the galactic food chain. At least he was consistent. The Academy's central hub buzzed with the usual pre-dinner chaos. Cadets from 17 different species clustered around holographic displays, comparing scores and making increasingly ridiculous boasts about their capabilities. Marcus grabbed a NutriPack from the dispenser and found his usual spot in social Siberia, a corner table, where the lighting was just dim enough to hide his latest collection of bruises. "Thompson!" The voice belonged to Cadet Zix, an insectoid whose compound eyes reflected every photon in the room. "Heard you set a new record today. Congratulations on being the first cadet to actually move backwards during a sprint." "Thanks, Zix. Your encouragement means everything to me." Marcus tore open his meal with perhaps more violence than necessary. "Really, I'm touched." Zix's mandibles twitched in what passed for a grin among his species. The bug was actually decent company when he wasn't trying to impress the popular crowd, but Academy social dynamics demanded a certain amount of casual cruelty toward the bottom feeders. Across the hub, Nora Prime held court at the center table. The cybernetically enhanced humanoid had replaced most of her original biology with military-grade hardware. Her reflexes tested faster than the scanning equipment could measure, and her tactical processors could calculate optimal movement patterns in real time. She was also, according to Marcus's completely unbiased opinion, insufferably smug about it. "The final assessment will separate the elite from the adequate," Nora announced to her audience of sycophants. "I anticipate a significant reduction in class size." Commander Veltar materialized beside Marcus's table with that unnerving silence that made reptilians such effective predators. "Thompson, a word." Marcus followed the commander to a quieter section of the hub, past displays showcasing the Academy's most distinguished graduates. Heroes who had saved star systems, defeated armadas, and negotiated peace between warring civilizations. Marcus tried not to think about how his own legacy would probably involve setting new records for spectacular failure. The final assessment has been scheduled, Veltar said without preamble. 1 week from today. Those who pass will graduate to active duty. Those who fail, he let the sentence hang like a plasma sword over Marcus's head. Let me guess, janitorial services? If you are fortunate. Veltar's slitted eyes studied Marcus with something that might have been curiosity. Your species intrigues me, Thompson. Humans show remarkable persistence despite obvious limitations. It will be fascinating to observe how long that persistence sustains you when truly tested. Great. Even his pity came with a side of condescension. The Academy's main auditorium hummed with nervous energy as all remaining cadets assembled for the final assessment briefing. Marcus counted heads automatically. 43 survivors from the original class of 80. The washout rate was brutal, but apparently not brutal enough for the instructor's liking. Commandant Thrix took the podium, her crystalline form refracting the stage lights into prismatic rainbows. When silicon-based lifeforms tried to look intimidating, they really committed to the aesthetic. Cadets, your final assessment will test every skill you've developed during your time here. A holographic display materialized above the stage, showing what looked suspiciously like a cosmic death trap. Swirling masses of plasma energy danced between gravitational anomalies, while electromagnetic storms turned space itself into a carnival of destruction. The Cathara Nebulous Storm System, Thrix announced with obvious satisfaction. You will navigate through the plasma fields to reach a beacon positioned at the system's core. Speed and agility will be paramount. The storms shift patterns every few seconds, requiring split-second reflexes to avoid disintegration. Marcus felt his stomach drop somewhere around his boots. Of course it was a speed trial. The universe's sense of humor was apparently as twisted as its physics. Furthermore, Thrix continued, this will be a solo assessment. No team coordination, no assistance, no second chances. You either reach the beacon, or you become an interesting statistic. Cadet Zik's wings buzzed with excitement. Finally, a real test of superior reflexes and processing speed. Nora Prime's optical sensors glowed brighter. My tactical systems are already calculating optimal route variations. This should be trivial. Even the usually reserved Zentorians looked confident. Their species had evolved dodging meteor storms on their homeworld. Plasma fields would be like a nostalgic childhood game. Marcus glanced around the auditorium. Every alien face radiated confidence, calculation, or predatory anticipation. The other humans looked about as optimistic as passengers on a ship with a hull breach. Assessment begins at dawn, Thrix concluded. Rest well. Some of you will need all the energy you can manage. As cadets filed out, Marcus caught fragments of conversation. Betting pools were already forming. The odds on his survival weren't just unfavorable, they were mathematically insulting. Hey, Thompson, called one of the Zentarians. Want to dictate any final messages home? I hear they give you 30 seconds before the plasma gets you. Thanks, but I'm saving my last words for something really important. Like complaining about the cafeteria food. At least his sense of humor was still intact. Everything else was probably doomed. The launch bay at dawn looked like a medical examiner's waiting room. 43 single-pilot craft hung from docking clamps, their sleek hulls reflecting the harsh overhead lighting. Marcus ran his hand along his assigned ship's hull plating, checking for loose bolts out of habit. The Academy's maintenance crews were notorious for their creative interpretation of spaceworthy. Attention cadets, crackled Commandant Thrix's voice through the comm system. Launch sequence begins in 60 seconds. Remember, speed saves lives. Hesitation kills. Commander Veltar slithered between the launch platforms, offering last-minute tactical advice to favored students. He paused beside Nora Prime's craft, his scaled head nodding approvingly at her pre-flight diagnostics. Excellent preparation, Prime. Your enhanced reflexes should give you significant advantage in the storm's chaotic environment. Nora's response was a confident smirk transmitted through her ship's external display. I've already mapped 17 optimal routes through the preliminary storm data. This assessment will be over in 12 minutes, 14 seconds. Zix's insectoid chittering echoed from his cockpit. My compound eyes can track 47 separate movement vectors simultaneously. The plasma streams might as well be standing still. Marcus sealed his helmet and settled into his pilot's seat. The neural interface connected with an uncomfortably familiar buzz, another reminder that human technology was perpetually 3 generations behind galactic standard. His ship's computer offered helpful suggestions like, try not to die, and, have you considered a career in agriculture? Launch commencing, announced Thrix. May the fastest survive. The bay door's iris opened, revealing the Cathara Nebula in all its lethal glory. Streams of superheated plasma twisted through space like luminous serpents, while electromagnetic pulses turned the cosmic background into a strobe-light nightmare. It was simultaneously the most beautiful and most terrifying thing Marcus had ever seen. The other cadets shot forward like missiles fired from railguns. Veltar's protégés led the charge, their ships dancing through the outer plasma streams with liquid grace. Nora Prime's vessel moved with mechanical precision, each course correction calculated to the nanosecond. Zix wove between energy discharges like he was born in a storm. Marcus eased his throttle forward and entered the nebula at roughly the speed of continental drift. "What is Thompson doing?" Veltar's voice cut through the comm chatter. "That approach speed is suicidal. The plasma streams will have time to form targeting solutions." But something weird was happening. The other ships, for all their impressive initial velocity, were starting to encounter problems. The storm's patterns weren't following any predictable sequence. They shifted and morphed like living things. What looked like a clear path would suddenly fill with deadly energy, forcing pilots into violent, evasive maneuvers. Marcus watched Cadet Byrix, a Zentaurian speed demon, execute a series of lightning-fast dodges that would have impressed an academy instructor, right up until the moment when a plasma tendril formed directly in his escape route. The resulting collision sent his ship tumbling toward a gravitational anomaly. "Emergency extraction for Cadet Byrix," Thrix announced with clinical detachment. 39 cadets remaining. Meanwhile, Marcus puttered along at his embarrassingly slow pace, watching the plasma streams with the same intensity he'd once used to study traffic patterns during Earth's rush hour. There was something almost predictable about the chaos. Not predictable in the sense that computers could calculate it, but predictable in the way that weather patterns made sense to farmers who had watched them for decades. A massive plasma discharge erupted directly ahead of the main pack of cadets. Ships scattered in all directions, their pilots relying on superhuman reflexes to avoid instant vaporization. Several barely escaped, their hull plating glowing from near misses. Marcus simply adjusted course slightly to the left and continued at his steady pace. The plasma stream passed harmlessly behind him, exactly where he'd expected it would be. For the first time since entering the academy, Marcus Thompson was exactly where he needed to be. 20 minutes into the assessment, the Cathara Nebula had claimed 12 more cadets. The extraction beacons dotted space like cosmic breadcrumbs, each one marking another speed demon who had pushed too hard, too fast, and paid the price. Marcus continued his leisurely cruise through what everyone else seemed to consider a death maze. "Cadet Prime, your hull temperature is approaching critical thresholds." Commandant Thrick's voice carried a note of concern that hadn't been there at launch. "Recommend reducing acceleration." Nora Prime's response crackled with static and frustration. "Negative, Commandant. My tactical systems indicate optimal path requires maximum velocity to outrun plasma convergence zones." Marcus could see her ship in the distance, a chrome dart weaving frantically between energy streams that seemed to anticipate her every move. Her enhanced reflexes were keeping her alive, but barely. Each evasive maneuver generated more heat, and her cooling systems were working overtime to prevent a catastrophic meltdown. "The problem," Marcus muttered to himself, "is that you're thinking like a computer in a system that doesn't follow computer logic." He'd figured it out around the 15-minute mark. The plasma storms weren't random. They were organic, not literally alive, but following patterns that resembled biological systems more than physical phenomena. Trying to outrun them was like trying to outrun a hunting pack. The faster you moved, the more aggressively they responded. But if you moved like prey that wasn't worth chasing... Commander Veltar's ship suddenly appeared on Marcus's sensors, approaching fast from behind. The reptilian had been leading the pack until a few minutes ago, but now his sleek vessel bore scorch marks, and his speed had dropped considerably. "Thompson," Veltar's voice came through a private channel, tight with something that might have been pain. "What is your secret? How are you maintaining course through sections that have eliminated half the class?" "No secret, Commander. I'm just really slow. Do not mock me, human. I have watched you navigate plasma streams that would challenge a master pilot. This cannot be mere coincidence." Marcus glanced at his rear display, watching Veltar struggle to match his reduced pace. The commander's ship was designed for burst acceleration, not sustained endurance. Like most predator-evolved species, Veltar excelled at short, violent displays of speed and agility. But the nebula demanded something else entirely. "You know what humans used to hunt back on Earth, Commander? Gazelles, antelopes, animals that could outrun us in a sprint without breaking a sweat. Another plasma surge erupted ahead of them. Veltar's instincts kicked in, sending his ship into a complex evasive pattern that burned fuel and generated heat. Marcus simply maintained course, letting the energy stream pass in front of him like a car waiting for traffic to clear. But here's the thing about persistence hunting, Marcus continued, his ship now pulling ahead of the commander's overheating vessel. We didn't catch them by being faster. We caught them by being relentless. We ran them down over hours, sometimes days, until their superior speed meant nothing because they were too exhausted to use it. Veltar's ship began falling behind, its cooling systems cycling desperately. Impossible. Humans are inferior in every measurable category. Measurable by whose standards? Marcus checked his navigation display. The beacon was still 40 minutes away at his current speed. Around him, the remaining cadets were burning themselves out in spectacular displays of technical virtuosity. Zix had been extracted 15 minutes ago after his compound eyes couldn't process the sensory overload. The Zentorians were dropping like flies as their meteor-dodging reflexes proved useless against intelligent plasma stream. But Marcus felt like he was just getting warmed up. His heart rate was steady, his ship systems were running cool, and he was actually starting to enjoy himself. This was what humans were built for, not the sprint, but the marathon. Not the explosive burst of speed, but the grinding, inexorable advance that wore down everything in its path. You see, Commander, Marcus said as Veltar's overheated ship triggered another extraction beacon, sometimes the tortoise really does win the race. We just needed a long enough track. Ahead of him, Nora Prime's ship finally succumbed to thermal overload. Her perfect tactical calculations had been worthless against a system that rewarded endurance over optimization. Marcus Thompson, the slowest cadet in Academy history, was now in first place. And he was just hitting his stride. The final approach to the beacon should have been the most dangerous part of the assessment. The plasma storms converged into a massive maelstrom around the target zone, creating what the Academy's tactical manuals described as a guaranteed fatality scenario for any pilot lacking superior reflexes and split-second decision-making capabilities. Marcus cruised through it like he was driving to the grocery store on a Sunday afternoon. "Cadet Thompson?" Commandant Thrix's voice carried a note of disbelief that her crystalline vocal cords weren't designed to express. "Please confirm your current status. Our sensors indicate you are approaching the beacon with minimal hull damage and optimal system performance." "Confirmed, Commandant. All systems green, hull integrity at 96%, and I'm running about 15 minutes ahead of my estimated arrival time." Marcus couldn't keep the grin out of his voice. "Oh, and I'm having the time of my life." Behind him, the nebula had claimed 38 of his classmates. The extraction beacons formed a glittering trail, marking the graveyard of superior reflexes and advanced tactical systems. Only 4 other ships remained active, and their pilots were pushing their vessels to the breaking point just to maintain position. The beacon loomed ahead, a simple navigation buoy that somehow represented everything Marcus had never been allowed to achieve. As he approached the docking ring, his ship's communication array picked up transmissions from the Academy's observation post. "Impossible," muttered Instructor Krax. "The human should have been vaporized in the first 10 minutes. His reaction times tested worse than a sedated slug-off." "Perhaps," came Commander Veltar's voice, surprisingly thoughtful despite his recent extraction, "we have been measuring the wrong characteristics." Marcus docked with the beacon and transmitted his completion code. 67 minutes, 32 seconds. From launch to finish. Not only had he survived what was supposed to be an elimination trial designed to wash out the weakest candidates, he had set a new Academy record. The remaining 4 cadets limped to the beacon over the next 20 minutes, their ships bearing scars from plasma strikes and thermal overloads. They docked with the mechanical precision of beings who had pushed themselves to their absolute limits and somehow found a little bit more. But Marcus felt like he could do the whole course again. "Attention all personnel," Commandant Thrix announced, as the survivors were brought aboard the Academy station. "Assessment review will commence immediately. All cadets report to debriefing chamber 7. The debriefing room felt different when you weren't sitting in the failure section. Marcus took a seat near the front, still slightly amazed that he belonged there. The 4 other survivors looked at him with expressions ranging from bewilderment to grudging respect. Commandant Thrix materialized at the podium, her crystalline form refracting the overhead lights into rainbow patterns that seemed almost celebratory. "Cadets, today's assessment has provided unexpected data regarding species-specific capabilities and tactical applications." She gestured, and a holographic display showed the mission statistics. Marcus's name sat at the top of the completion list, his time nearly 20% better than the second-place finisher. Cadet Thompson, Thrix continued, your performance challenges several fundamental assumptions about human limitations in high-stress scenarios. Please explain your tactical approach. Marcus stood, still getting used to being the example instead of the cautionary tale. Well, Commandant, I guess the secret was realizing that it wasn't actually a race. The plasma storms responded to aggressive movement, like a predator responds to prey behavior. The faster everyone moved, the more aggressively the system reacted. And your solution was to move slowly. My solution was to move steadily. There's a difference. Marcus looked around the room at faces that had spent months dismissing human capabilities. My species evolved as persistence hunters. We didn't catch our prey by being faster or stronger. We caught them by being relentless, by outlasting them, by still being there when everything else gave up. Veltar's voice carried across the room. A fascinating adaptation. We assumed human endurance was merely compensation for inferior speed. Turns out it was the other way around, Marcus replied. Speed was just what we used to fill the gap until we could get to a long enough course. Commandant Thrick's optical sensors dimmed and brightened in what Marcus had learned was the silicon equivalent of a smile. Effective immediately, Cadet Thompson will be redesignated as Marathon-class navigator with specialization in extended Dern tactical scenarios. Your new call sign will be... She paused, consulting her datapad. Endurance. It wasn't the most creative call sign in military history, but it beat the hell out of Turtle. As the debriefing concluded and his fellow survivors offered congratulations, Marcus reflected on the strange turns life could take. 6 months ago, he had been the Academy's biggest failure, a walking advertisement for human inadequacy. Today, he was a record holder and a testament to the idea that sometimes the longest route was also the fastest. Hey, Endurance, called one of the surviving cadets as they left the debriefing room. Want to grab dinner? I hear they're serving something other than Nutripacks tonight. Marcus grinned. Sounds good, but fair warning, I eat slowly too. Some things, he had learned, were worth taking your time with.